Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All I can say is, whew. Good to have you back. So, Director Wray, you testified that no court has held that the Fourth Amendment applies to 702 searches, but in 2019, the Second Circuit explained that 702 U.S. person inquiries, quote, does have important Fourth Amendment implications, end quote, and it remanded that case for further review. I know that you testified that you have put in place various protections and accountability features to prevent the misuse or abuse of 702, but my understanding is that prior to your putting in place these kinds of protections, there was something in the order of 2 million U.S. citizen inquiries under 702, and then that has gone down to some 200,000. That's still a lot of queries. So my colleague, Chris Coons, asked, while you have these protocols in place and courts have said you're doing a good job with regard to abuse of 702, but really what is to prevent another administration from removing these protocols? And in fact, I note that during the Trump years, his administration, they interpreted the words derived from in a very broad way under FISA. So I do think that there are a number of us who are concerned about another administration not paying as much attention to abuses as you have testified. And even now, I also have some concerns relating to the U.S. citizen queries under 702. But let me turn to another matter. You did note that there is a heightened environment for foreign terrorism. In your testimony, though, you note that the top domestic terrorism threat we face continues to be from racially motivated violent extremists and anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists. Can you explain how the tech companies, and a lot of this is of people who have been typically radicalized online, can you explain how the tech companies could be better partners in rooting out domestic violent extremism?
Well, some of this goes to the exchanges that we've already had about the encryption issue, and when individuals, we have found historically, move to discussing truly operational, actual violent activity, they tend to move to encrypted platforms, which if those encrypted platforms are not designed in a way to be responsive to a warrant, then that activity, just like the child exploitation we talked about earlier, would be beyond reach. So we need companies to work with us on that. So that's one. Second, the companies have their own terms of service and actions that they can take, and on their own platforms are actions that they could take to help reduce abuse. But most importantly, I think on social media platforms, we need people who are on those platforms, who are Americans who see threats of violence. Again, that's what this is about, threats of violence, to alert law enforcement if they see them.
Well, certainly we can do that, but as you say, just as with the reporting of hate crimes, et cetera, these are all very underreported. And I think that there are concerns about possibly limiting the liability protections under Section 230. Would that be another way to get these platforms to pay attention to content on their platforms?
Well, without weighing on specific legislative proposal, what I would say is that these are gigantic companies now with all kinds of activities, some very positive, some very negative, that happens on their platforms. And just like any industry, it makes sense to me that they should take responsibility for what happens on their platforms. Their duties, unlike ours, unlike this committee's, their duties are to maximize profit for the shareholders. And there's nothing wrong with that being their duties, but that's a very different responsibility than all of us have to protect the American people.
it does sound as though that we need to make some changes to Section 230 liability protections, and I think we need to go there. Let me turn to another important issue. Sex trafficking remains a real issue in Hawaii and to other Native peoples. And in Hawaii, for example, the sex trafficking disproportionately impacts the Native Hawaiian community to the point where Native Hawaiian women and girls represent 67 to 77% of sex trafficking victims and 37% of child trafficking cases in Hawaii. And earlier this year, the FBI launched Operation Not Forgotten to help solve cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. I think that is a really important step for the FBI to take. And prior to that, you also have in place Operation Cross Country, which is a 13-year program highlighting some of these issues. Can you tell us a bit more about what these programs do and what you hope to accomplish through these programs?
Well, so these programs are designed to both rescue victims of human trafficking and to take down the predators who engage in the human trafficking. And we take a very victim-centered, victim-focused approach. So in addition to rescuing the victims and arresting the predators, our victim services personnel try to engage with the victims to connect them up to social services and things like that, so that we recognize that it's a long road of recovery for them even after they're rescued from the trafficking itself, and we're trying to help get them on the right path that way. Part of the reason things like Operation Cross Country are kind of combined the way they are is to raise awareness for victims and witnesses and deterrence for predators.
I know that Operation Cross Country resulted in the finding of some 6 missing children in Hawaii. I've asked you this before regarding focusing on Native Hawaiian women and girls who are trafficked. And is Operation Not Forgotten in Hawaii?
Is it in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, does it?
I think Operation Not
Presence in
Forgotten is Operation Not Forgotten is if I recall the name correctly, there is very specific operations in Hawaii that our Honolulu field office and division are conducting, and they do some great work in the human trafficking space, and I'm proud of the work they've done for your community, your citizens, in fact, the citizens, your constituents of the state of Hawaii.
Thank you. I appreciate the effort, and I'm glad that some of my colleagues have asked you about what more we can do regarding the rise in anti-Semitism in our country, especially on our college campuses. Thank you for whatever you can do to assist in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hirono. Senator Holy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for being here.